As you know, February 14, 2020 is the 25th anniversary of the Delphi launch at Moscone Center in 1995, and to celebrate, I've created a few videos that show the product as it was, and I hope you enjoy them.
This is the original Delphi 1 box, and here there is a box of Delphi 5 signed by the dev team, and finally this is the Delphi 6 box. Now we can look what was inside the box, and there were many manuals, something that's not really common today, database application developers guide, local interface server, user guide, Delphi for Windows, component writer's guide. That's an entire book covering how to write custom component. The ReportSmith, report engine, SQL links, that was part of the Poland database engine. And finally, the introduction, which was the user's guide of Delphi, and it was covering how to use the IDE. The various elements and the operations in the IDE, options, these are three of the most classic Delphi books that were created for Delphi 1. This is Pacheco and Teixeira, Delphi Developer's Guide. They ended up doing a lot of editions. There was a foreword of Heidelberg, and it's a massive book covering everything in the product, more or less. And you can see dynamic library, migration from Pascal, debugging, ready-to-use demos. There was a lot there. The other very popular book was Charlie Calvert, Delphi Unleashed. He also went ahead and published many versions after this one. This is the first one that got out by Sam's Publishing. This is the summary of the contents. You can see it here. It was also a 1,000 pages book, more or less, and covering a lot of features, data structures, files, debugging, BD, SQL language. And then one that wasn't as popular but was probably the best book in terms of technical content, Danny Thorpe, Delphi Component Design. This was more focused on understanding how components work and streaming work. Was much smaller, but was very deep in terms of technical information, meant for someone writing components, but also for someone who really wanted to understand Delphi deep into, like, I don't know, VMT tables, structures. Again, was really much more technical, not an intro book, but was worth every page and every concept, because it really helped people outside of the team understand the core tenets of the product. This is the first edition of Mastering Delphi. See, it's a big tome. Actually, it had 1,500 pages and had the entire coverage of everything you could do with the product back then. From VCL development on Windows, and that was actually Windows 3. It's not Windows 95. You can see the look and feel in the images. It's an example of the IDE. And there was a hierarchy of the components. That was also available as a poster later in the product. And this is the table of contents. And it came with a CD that I have here. This is before Delphi. It's Turbo Pascal for Windows on floppy disk. Delphi came in two versions, the plain one and the client server. This was the original feature matrix. Both had compilers and core tools. The client server one had reporting. I think that's a mistake. And then there was Borland SQL links, kind of BDE, and the Visual Computer Library source code came only with the client server version, and that was later rolled into the basic version. This is the product flyer. It covered the key features, component palette, the development model, some of the integrated features, and of course the UI was classic Windows UI, and then the list of the features in the box. This is where the product Borland was doing that time.
The Delphi launch event took place at the Moscone Center during the Software Development Conference West in '95, and this was the entrance of the conference center itself. Now this is a view from the inside of the conference, and this was the exhibit hall. Microsoft was showcasing in great evidence Windows 95 that was about to be released. Now this is another angle. It was Symantec C++. It was a big show, and then Borland had both the older tools, C++ products, DBase, but forefront and with a lot of visibility. It was all focused on Delphi. And in fact, I have this image. The quality is not great, but this was the Borland booth. You see Delphi boxes all over, and actually you can spot David I, who was in front of the booth. And finally, this is a picture of myself at the time during that trip.
Now this is where things got officially announced. As you can see here at the Software Development 95 conference at Moscone Center in San Francisco, there was the Delphi launch, 7 p.m. Tuesday, February 14th. And then it was, of course, 1995, 25 years ago. There was a big event in the big ballroom, some 5,000 people. And the people assembled there and met to see what was coming with this new product. The product was also in exhibit at this booth, as you can see. And if we now open the conference program, we can see there was a big product address. There was a keynote, the importance of object computing, the algorithmic link by Philip Kahn, and then right after that there was the introduction to Delphi. This just gives you an idea what else was happening at that time. It was C++. C++ was big. There were other events and conferences. Microsoft was introducing the Microsoft Foundation class library. And there was a C++ Super Bowl competition between Borland, Microsoft, Whatcom. It was really kind of a heavy C++ conference at the time. This is the exhibit, and you can see Borland was right there with Microsoft and Symantec. And here's an image of the Borland booth, but that of course was for the previous year. Here again you can see the keynote and Borland product launch and party in the Gateway Ballroom on February 14th. You can see the specific description. Borland will be announcing an exciting new development tool for upsizing and client-server market. Then it's off to Exploratorium of Science, but you must attend the launch to get your ticket. After the event, there was a bus that took people to the Exploratorium, and which is actually a very fine, very nice museum in San Francisco, and there were like big party there as well. I was attending as speaker to that conference, as you can see, but that was part of the technical track, which had a separate flyer and had events on multiple programming languages and tools. Here you can see the track chair. And there were sessions with Byron Sturstrup and other very nice tutorials. I actually gave a session on C++. That was my talk for the event. Notice I didn't have an email, I had a CompuServe number back then.
And here you can see me playing with Delphi 1 in a virtual machine, while on the other monitor there's actually Delphi 10.3.3, just doing some simple kind of random operations, creating a very small app, dropping a few components. That's the object inspector, changing the text of the edit box there, and then the code behind the button, which is kind of the standard add an item to the list. And this is the application running. You see it's really fast to compile and build an application. And now it's kind of the same exact code on the latest version, and as you can see, it's very different UI, but the basics remain the same, the concept the same, and actually in that specific case, the one line of code behind the operation is still exactly the same setting the main property or searching the property, and I can also search the components in the new palette. This is the classic one-liner to add that line of text in the from the edit to the list box, and now you can, if I compile the application, you can get it up and running, and this is the behavior, of course, in Windows.